Allô, Papa, and whoever else wants to come for a little bike ride by the sea with Leslie and I today. I wanted to give you a little taste of Newfoundland. Leslie and I, it's the first time we take the car out for our bike ride, and yes, we wore our masks in the car ride, but just 14 minutes away we were in CBS at the Emmanuel's River Interpretation Center, and the parking lot, as you saw, was empty, but it certainly wasn't empty 4.5 hours later when we came back. The cars were circling round and round and round trying to get a spot. It was hot, one of the hottest days in Newfoundland so far, and this is our favorite trail that goes all the way along the ocean, and it goes much further than what we went today, but we'd had enough. After 4.5 hours, our bodies had their maximum, especially in the heat. I don't do so well in the heat, so I had to pour water over my head a few times just to keep the body temperature down. One thing we love about this trail is there's, a balance of forest paths as well as time by the sea. And Leslie needs to be around the trees and I need to be around the water. So this is a perfect one that we enjoy going down. And of course there's little miraculous little things happening in nature that I have to stop and look at. And this is where I get really excited, is when we get to the marina, knowing that this ocean is right after it. And my heart just opens wide open when I'm by the water. And this is Bell Island here. And the water today was so still, so beautiful. It's just, I love my neighborhood walks, but when I come out here, when I'm by the sea, it's a whole other feeling. So grateful to be here, so grateful to be in Newfoundland, so grateful for all that it has to offer, and this bike path being one of them. There were a few surprises along the way, though, something that we weren't expecting and I hadn't heard, since I don't listen to the news much, and although I post a lot on Facebook, I don't read a lot of other people's posts often if I don't have the time to, so I had no idea what looks like construction here, which is what I thought, because the path was officially closed, but we went anyways because we didn't see any machinery around, so we thought, well, let's just keep going. This is the pumpkin field, usually on the left here, but it's just the beginning of the season. And all these rocks here we thought was construction, but what happened was during Snowmageddon, that big huge snowstorm that buried Newfoundland, you can see some erosion here on the right. Basically all the beach rocks and all the rocks from the ocean floor got tossed onto the trail and beyond. Here wasn't so bad, but wait till you see a little later on. It's impressive, the force of nature. So on this trail, there's always a few places we like to sneak into and just stop to contemplate and look around and be for a while, and this is one of them. And these videos have been fun to make. I'm having fun with my new iPhone and just being a filmmaker in a way, I guess. But I have to find a new system when it comes to being on my bicycle, because what I've been doing is taking the bungee cord off the rack in the back and singeing it around my waist as a belt, but it's a little too tight and so it cuts off my breath. It's not the most comfortable. But what we do for our art. And so here you see this used to be a gravel path, and it's been completely buried by stones, beach stones. Here on this side not so bad, but here you can see it took us about 10 minutes to walk this stretch, and this is the worst stretch and is the only real stretch where you can't go through on your bicycle. Apart from that, it's quite normal. But this was really impressive. It's just to imagine on the day of or during that storm what the power of the waves that must have been there. It went all the way to this marsh that I love so much, the colors in here, but you see the stones where it went all the way there. Impressive. And I don't know if I mentioned, yeah, they said it would take $1 million to clear off the path and to rebuild because there's erosion and stuff too. So on our bikes again to keep going, and glad to have my water, plenty of it with us today. And so yes, I don't own any belts, but I'm sure I could borrow one. But what I really need to do is learn to fasten my camera somehow to my helmet so that you're not necessarily looking at my arms. But although a lot of people didn't have long sleeves on today, a lot of shorts and sleeveless, I have to say that being so sensitive to the sun and still getting over my sunburn from last week, I'm glad to have my long sleeves. There were a few people. In Newfoundland, it's quite easy not to be in crowds. The trail is gorgeous, but there's so much nature all around that people find their way to different places. But there were families and strollers and dogs. And one thing I noticed this year is when I ring my bell, people actually hear me and they get off the path. Last year, it got to the point where it was just... it happened so often that Leslie and I had this sort of inside joke about it, is that we'd ring our bell and people would stop in the middle of the path and take their phones out. They thought it was their phones ringing. But this year people actually understand that it's a bell, so I don't know if people are more aware of their environment, or they're just a little more disconnected from their phones when they're out in nature, or not sure what, but it's noticeable the difference of this year and last year just in terms of people responding to the bell. And here's the little puppy. Oh, maybe not a puppy, but a dog. And there's lots of those on this path, always nice to see. And this path goes through CBS, so sometimes there's houses, sometimes there's trees and forests. I think this is where on the left, take a look at the, maybe not. At one point there's these skeleton sort of white tuckamore trees that I just love. It's fun because, we've done this path a few dozen times over the years, and there's landmarks that we're always happy to see again, but it's ever changing. Never so noticeable as this time though, with all those beach stones. But this is where we stopped for lunch. This is where Leslie stopped on the left at the meadow and her trees and journaled for an hour. I sat on a big boulder on the right here, looking out at the ocean, listening to the loons, watching the eagle being chased by seagulls. And on the left over there is a sand quarry. We sometimes go quite a bit further. It's fun going in there with our cameras because it's kind of like Planet of the Apes, moon type landscapes. It's some days over there is really fun. But this time we'd had quite enough in terms of knowing we'd have to make it back, and it was getting really hot. And it's still early in the season, and so, there's only so much our bodies can take. But it was worth every pedal, and just can't get enough of the scenery. There's a sense of freedom of being on a bicycle. Ever since I was a kid, being on a bike was as close to being on a horse, although being on a horse was too scary. So being on a bicycle, there's a sense of freedom and speed and being at one, just moving in nature, being. And yes, this big boulder left here by the glaciers at some point. One of the definite landmarks on this trail. Oh, what a beautiful day on our bikes. I hope you've enjoyed being here with us. Take care.